I could say anything to you. All
right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. Kendall Projects podcast number 4. 4 today. We're here with Zach Seibert. Easy Shakes for those of you that are familiar with the Columbia music scene and what's going on. Zach, thanks for being here, man. We appreciate it.
No problem, man. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're gonna try to talk about some stuff. In the last several years, I would say you've been interviewed a lot. There's a lot of stuff out there about your background, your history, and the band, all that stuff. So we're gonna try to veer away from that a little bit and try to have a conversation that
I'll take it.
You normally don't have when talking about Easy Shakes or however and whatnot. So I guess one of the things I want to talk about is we all have these set of musical foundations that inform our taste,
right?
Life decisions, however you want to talk about that. So, and that's something. We know that your parents were musicians, and they travel. They were traveling musicians. But let's talk about some. And you're a record fan, so where did that happen? Can you talk first why records? Why something? Was that an early experience, or does that come later in life? Like where? Because that's almost like it's like yoga. It's musical yoga.
It is. It totally is. Early on, my dad collected records to some degree. I don't know if I call him a collector, but that was the medium in my house.
Okay.
So he would bring new records home and spin them or whatever. And he wasn't much of a player. My mom was the musician, but he was the sound guy for the band that they were in early on. Mm-hmm. So he would bring all these records home and spin them or whatever. And so it started early, and then obviously it moved to cassette as I was a kid or whatever, joining all those stupid clubs and getting all the free cassettes. And
did you guys have the thing in your house on the record player where you could set up multiple records that would drop?
We did.
Okay, yeah,
we did.
People don't understand that. I remember learning how to use that, man.
Yeah, it was
because you'd go through everybody's A side and then flip it and go through everybody's B side.
I almost wish they. I'm sure they do it somewhere, but I almost wish that was a system still, because there's a lot of times I'm at the house wandering around doing stuff, and it's like, the record's been over for like 30 minutes, and I didn't even realize,
Yeah, that's the only bad thing about it. That was because that was when I was a kid, because I would set those up and listen to them as I was drawing or whatever,
right?
And they would just click through and then flip them and then click through. Yeah, so
awesome, man. But yeah, from early on, I would say my mom was a big classical listener, so we had all these classical records as well,
like Mozart.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, like libraries of them. It's like 30 records or whatever.
So what were? I had to say, what was the first record, or first maybe two records that were like, did you knew that was like this would be mine, like, you know what I mean? Or did you ever first go buy your first record, or did somebody give you a record at an early age and like this is my entry point?
Yeah, the first record I bought with my own money was U2's Under a Blood Red Sky. It was at a Peaches in Massachusetts. My dad took me to buy it or whatever, and sorted through the bins, and that's what I chose. I'm not exactly sure why, because I think I was just more entranced with the cover,
Okay.
Not really familiar with them, but it kind of blew my mind. But the records that my dad brought home that kind of stick in my mind as ones that were introduced to me were John Cougar's American Fool.
Okay.
Bob Seger's Night Moves, Nazareth's Hair of the Dog.
Wow.
As crazy as it sounds, Tina Turner's Private Dancer.
Oh, yeah.
And what's her name? Bonnie Tyler's It's a Jungle Out There.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's not great.
Okay.
But it's got some special moments on it.
Okay.
But yeah, those were like, especially the first three, and then as I got a little older, I remember we had a some sort of birthday celebration, and Mom and Dad, I think it may have been Saul's birthday, maybe, but Mom and Dad, as a peace offering, got us both a record so that I wouldn't feel left out of the birthday or whatever. You know?
Oh, wow.
And Saul got Van Halen's 1984, and I got Cars' Heartbreak City, and I was so fucking pissed. I was so pissed. Oh, it wasn't even my birthday, but I was like, man, really? He got the cool rock and roll record? But then later I realized that I probably had the better record. You know,
Okay.
It's a great record.
Yeah, it's a great record.
But
That's for sure.
it was their last good one on both bands.
Yeah, well, that's true.
You know,
It's true. After that, it went downhill.
yeah,
From there, yeah, it wasn't far, and then Sammy Hagar took over.
Yeah.
Not too far after that.
oh,
So 5 years later, it was a completely different situation
Yep.
with that.
Yep.
All right, so you kind of beat me to the punch. All right, so for those of you that don't know us, I spent a lot of time with Zach and his brother Saul, and Saul likes to refer to this kind of music as guilty pleasures.
yeah.
Do you take that same kind of idea when you say talking about things like John Cougar Mellencamp or John Cougar or John Mellencamp? However, maybe you can clarify that for us.
Well, I think the difference is like John Cougar, I don't see as a guilty pleasure.
Okay.
I see as something that's I'm proud to say that was an influence on my music, or and I still, even though most of it I'm not crazy about, I still follow him to some degree.
Yeah.
I don't buy his records necessarily or anything, but however, if I listen to Bonnie Tyler, that would be a guilty pleasure.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Mostly because nobody would think it's good, and it probably isn't. You know,
But you love it anyway.
yeah, but it's kind of good. You know,
Kind of like pickle
Yeah.
beats.
But yeah, I mean, John Cougar was I wanted my hair like him.
Okay.
I wanted to.
So early on, this was not only an idol, but this was something that you possibly could fashion yourself after.
Right.
So it was a visual thing.
I was young and in Illinois, and he was in the next state over, and he was so common, and
So proximity played
a part in it
that. Okay.
to some degree. Just a farmland boy that grew up in a small town that was short and not incredibly good looking, and rode motorcycles, and but told stories that at my age I could understand. You know what I mean? There's a lot of bands that were happening at the time, I'm sure, that you're listening, you're not, they're singing in some sort of abstract adult world, where his was just, it's always been just very common. You know what I mean? Talking about the things that common people have to deal with.
Right.
And so there was a super, I grabbed onto that, I guess.
Are there some songs that you can say, like, look, this was one that this is the first song I knew all the words to, that was I would sing, or
I mean,
or I learned on guitar.
The big ones that hit the radio off American Fool were obviously Jack and Diane and Hurt So Good. But there was this one song, it's the last song on the second side, I believe, called Weakest Moments.
I don't know that song.
It's beautiful.
I'll
It's
check it out.
super quiet, and it's just acoustic guitar, pretty much in his voice. But there was, and as I've gotten older, I've listened to it and not really understood why I liked it so much, because it's definitely an adult song,
Meaning
like a, familial discord and addiction problems,
okay.
And it's a short song. It's only like 2 verses, I think.
Okay.
But that was one that, and the whole thing is it wasn't just so, he's telling this story, but also the chorus is, I'll be with you in your weakest moments.
I do know that song.
Yeah,
I do know that
it's a
song.
crazy good song. There's some sort of weird, tangible redemption. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Out of something that sucks, you know.
Right. And we're going to get into that theme, for sure. So okay, so John Cougar into what? Like you've had a huge. I mean,
musically speaking, I started there. Kind of. We had Born in the USA and.
So some Springsteen in there.
Yeah,
well. Okay.
Springsteen, even Ryan Adams, Restless was the name of the
Restless.
record.
That's right.
So a lot of like Tom Petty, Southern Comfort's record.
Okay.
There was a lot of Americana, what's called Americana now, rock and roll kind of.
Was that stuff your dad was listening to as
Yeah.
well? Okay.
Yeah, and then of course the boon of MTV,
Yeah.
and where you actually could watch videos.
Yeah.
And the Headbangers Ball kind of changed my life.
How's that? Because it
well,
was just like dangerous, or like you like the music. What was it?
I liked the music, and it was dangerous, and there was all this hubbub about it being satanic, and and for years I didn't listen to certain bands that I tout now as being some of the greatest rock and roll bands, some of the best metal bands, like Slayer, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, I just had a severe conviction that they were just all about the devil, and
Okay, so you've brought up a really great talking point, because that was my own personal experience. Was very much that.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was in college that I was like even had the courage to really delve into those bands and what they were doing. Mm-hmm. So those of you that don't know Zach and his background a little bit, like there's a very evangelical upbringing in the church. Yeah. And so that's what he's talking about with that. So
it was real strange because, like, as far as brought up in a Christian home and everything. However, my parents kind of let us set our own limits musically. They were pretty liberal in that way. Most of my friends that I went to church with and stuff, their parents were not. Like I remember at the time, there was this Christian band called Bloodgood.
I know that band.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I had a dub tape on like a TDK tape or something. And on one side was Bloodgood, and on the other side was Alice Cooper's Constrictor record.
Oh.
And I left it at a buddy's house, and sure as shit,
you never got that back.
We got a call saying that they were going to burn it. How could I bring the devil into their house and this and that?
Get out of town.
Yeah, and so Dad, quickly told him if they burned it, there'd be problems, and he's on his way over there to get it. But
wow, man.
But so he didn't really. I think they had questions about a lot of the music that was happening, just like I have a lot of questions about the music that's happening now.
Sure.
As a parent,
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a whole other podcast.
It is. But in the same respect, they were very gracious. I think and there was plenty of bands. I listened to all this. I went from thrash to punk rock probably. I was really into Metal Church and Testament.
Testament.
Yeah, all these, Power Mad and Sacred Reich, all these, crazy Nuclear Assault. And then that kind of graduated into bands that were more awesome, like Creator and Coroner.
Did you ever go back to those bands like Slayer? And
I listen to Slayer at least once a week.
Okay.
At work.
Cool.
I Bluetooth it in. It's just like and I keep up with their catalog, and I'm not like Slayer, but
you're a fan.
But I'm a fan.
Gotcha.
There's nobody that does it like them.
I agree. I remember when I was in art school, there was a friend of mine, and that was my, I was still much Southern rock, heavy metal, but not death, speed metal.
Right.
And I lived with these three guys for a year, and it was really, honestly, one of the most creative, inspiring experiences I had when you're living with three other dudes that are equally as talented or
Right.
or want to try to get down to something.
Yeah.
And he was a record freak, and it was just like, we get stoned and open a bottle of whiskey, and he was like, Slayer. I was like, what the fuck is this, man?
I had all these friends, man, that were really into him, and it was just like a tune-out for me. You know what I mean? It was just
And I
like
think
that was where the line was in the sand for me. All the pentagrams on the cover and stuff like this. I was like, surely they're terrible. Surely that's not
killing babies at night.
I mean, it had to be bad.
Yeah. And that was, I was lucky enough at that time too. Like I had no baggage, and I was like, all right, what else you got?
Yep.
And it became like Neurosis, and
I love Neurosis.
so that these bands that are just, and even like Pantera for me was like huge at that time.
That was huge, man. Cowboys from Hell.
Yeah,
was a
man.
Huge record.
It's funny that I had a story that so with those guys, they introduced me to the real Pantera. I was a football player, and there was a segment that Pantera did with the Dallas Cowboys for the NFL films. Okay,
Really?
all right, and it was Cowboys from Hell, and they introduced the guitar player as Diamondback Darrell. Okay, so when I got introduced to Pantera again later on, I might have been like 21. This is right at the beginning of art school, and I was like, "Yeah, that's Diamondback Darrell," and they were like, "What the fuck are you talking about? That's Dimebag, man." And by then, I've been smoking weed for a long time and all that stuff, but
just never.
But I would never. I was like,
really?
Duh. And I was like,
right.
I was like, it was one of those you go into the bathroom like, oh man, like I tried to have a reference point.
blew it.
So, yeah. So no, it was. I had a very similar experience with like how I first really digested that
Right.
music. So
I had a huge boob moment that was kind of like that. I was really into one of my early influences was this Christian guy named Mike Knott,
okay,
and he fronted several bands, the Lifesavers Underground.
you keep talking. I'm gonna just.
Okay. And LSU, and they did a bunch of records, and then he played in a band called Aunt Betty's Ford that got a little bit of traction. He was playing with a couple of the guys from Social D, I think.
Okay.
But he was always like this, like black sheep of the Christian community, But I was at this festival, Cornerstone Festival in Illinois, 20 years ago. Anyway, and he ran this label called Blonde Vinyl Records for a short stint of time. And in that short stint of time, he put out some of the most important alternative Christian music that has ever been put out, probably. I mean, it was a short stint, but I won't go into the bands. But it collapsed.
Okay.
So I was at this music festival, and I went up to buy a shirt or a CD or a record or something, and he was at the booth, and I geeked. I was like, I'm a super huge fan. So what happened with Blonde Vinyl Records?
Wrong question.
And it was like it was really quick after that, and it was just like an immediate
shut down.
I mean, he wasn't rude or anything, but it's obviously something that he
Did not want to talk about.
no. I was like, man, that was my moment. You know what I mean? Like that was my moment, and I fucking made him uncomfortable.
But you're a naive kid too.
Right,
Like,
I was, man. I probably wasn't 17 years old if I was that.
Wow.
But,
So when did you start collecting records for yourself? Other than the first record, did it just snowball from there, and you just kind of?
it did. I got a good little collection of a bunch of different records. When I lived in Illinois, there wasn't much in the way of record stores in this little town I stayed in, so I'd have to travel to get them. But there was this one place. It was really weird. It was I think it was like a rent-to-own. It's still there. It's called what was it called? I want to say it was called Fleshman's, but I don't think that's right. But anyway, it was like one of these old school corner department stores where you go in and get like big TVs but you get couches and
So like a hometown JCPenney's and Sears all in one time.
right. You could get refrigerators there and stuff, But they had this weird stairwell that went down in the middle of the store. There was this weird stairwell that went downstairs, and there was crates and crates of records, used records. And it was slim pickings, But I think that's where I bought Journey's Escape, and you know, a lot of records like that. You know, blockbuster records that they made too many of, or you know what I mean. So I started that, and then I got divorced, and all my records disappeared.
Oh no,
And,
really?
yeah,
That what happened?
Yeah, it happened. But you know, Mikasa Sukasa.
Yeah.
And
The way of the samurai.
it is, man. It is. So you know, I've just started piecing it back together through the years. You know what I mean? Like,
So you come across stuff now, like in Pop Jazz, you're like, oh, I haven't seen that in years.
exactly.
You don't know, and I need it. I gotta
Yeah,
have it. I gotta
exactly. So many records like that, though, man. I find that I buy, and like a year later, I'm like, what am I doing with this? You know what I mean? Like, it's great, you know, and it's a great something to spin and reminisce, but
It's not a crowd pleaser.
nah, it's not anything I listen to very often, even because
Yeah.
usually the reminiscing. A lot of times I find now when I pick up those records, I'm like, I don't know that I want to reminisce about this anymore. You know what I mean?
Because it's not good.
yeah. It's like at one time this was awesome, but now it's just
No,
like
I just can't
yeah.
stomach it. I can't
Yeah.
stomach it. So let's move on to Bob Seger a little bit. Like that's a huge. I mean, I'm definitely a John Cougar fan.
Yep.
Pink Houses
It's
you know,
awesome.
You know, one of my favorite. Play guitar.
Mhm.
Walls come tumbling down. Those
Yep.
are just really songs that are just that is. But Bob Seger, I'll write it on occasion, just somewhere, and I'll even post it on Facebook. Remember me with Bob Seger,
right.
because like there's so many deep cuts
Oh man,
that
it's
nobody ever
endless.
hears or
It's
nobody
endless.
even knows, that are just they're
It's
like
endless,
you
man.
know. It's
I
just,
mean, I don't know that it's endless. There's, you know, but there's a giant catalog that 90% of the people out there that know the name Bob Seger have never heard. You
True.
know, there's like from Night Moves on, everybody knows who Bob Seger is.
right.
You know, Night Moves was the record.
The record.
You know, probably would be in my top 10 island records, maybe.
Yes.
However, that's one of those records that's a reminiscing record for me. That
Okay.
every time I put it on, it's like, but it's all good.
All good stuff.
Oh, it's all good, man. I can't, like, Main Street was probably
Street.
my favorite song as a child.
Yeah.
It's the first song I can remember being like, that's my favorite song.
Okay.
I wanted to hear it all the time. You know, that lick. That
Yeah. I do the whistling thing every
and
time.
I didn't even understand what the song was about as a kid.
Really? Okay.
No,
okay.
no. I mean, I was just in love with it. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until later I was like, oh shit, you know, it's about a stripper. You know?
Yeah, that's right.
But
A long, little, lovely lady in a bar downtown. That's right. That's a good one, man.
hard in the points bar.
Yeah.
What does he say? Oh, that's a different one. That's on the same record though. That's on. That's hard in the noun.
Yeah. That's not on that record, though, is it?
It's that's Night Moves.
Is
It's
it
the
Night
song
Moves?
Night Moves. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. It was had points on our own.
Yeah.
Send it way up high.
Yeah.
That's right. Another song on that record, is it Come to Papa or Strut?
They're both on there.
They're both of them on there?
badass.
Those are the two songs. Like,
Oh
those
my
are like
God, dude.
that bass line. Do 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 do
Yeah.
do do.
It's so ridiculous.
That was like, you know, because I bought that CD probably in middle school when I bought that CD, and it was because of Night Moves, and then Main Street, because that's when I just started listening to the Fox.
Yeah.
And when I bought that, the Strut, and Come to Papa, I was like, now that
Those tunes are so
those are just
killer, dude.
get down, dirty, funky type
Oh my
stuff.
God. And you know, he had sort of a resurgence with the re-release of Smokin' OPS.
Yes.
And whereas that's a great record, there's only one or there's two songs on there that he wrote. All the others are covers. And I mean, they're, you know, he does like my heart-on song of all time, If I Were a Carpenter.
Oh yeah.
Like, there's a point in that song where I'm just like, oh God, this is so good. Like, you know, but before that, I mean, there's so much good stuff, man. Like Chances
Chances.
is like if there's a go-to record that I play more than any of the others, even though Night Moves is my baby, kind of. If there's another record, it's my go-to. It's that one. It's just so good, man. It's like solid. And then he just re-released Bob Seger and the what's it called? Anyway, it's all mono recordings from like
Way back?
'67.
Oh, really? I have to
Yeah,
check
and it's
that out.
killer, man.
All right, I'll have to
It's
get on
killer.
that. Me, it's Nine to Night and Live Bullet. I'm a huge
Live Bullet's badass. And
Yeah.
Night and Night's great too.
yeah. I'd have to say that Live Bullet's better out of the two, but I love live albums because being a fan, and you'll know this too. Like the idea of, let's just say, like you guys doing a live album,
Right.
what that took, what that would take to get cuts to make an album.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about bottling lightning,
Yeah, and it's like both of them are double albums.
right?
In Nine to Night, I'll tell you this funny story. Nine to Night, there's a picture on the inside.
Right.
When you open it up, of Bob Seger standing kind
I
of
know exactly.
bow-legged.
Yep, I know exactly
Dude,
the album. That
Growing
image.
up, I was like, I want to have jeans that look just like that.
Okay.
I was like,
Okay.
that dude's got the most perfect rock and roll posture, and his jeans are awesome, and I want to be that dude. You know what I mean? Like, I remember like that picture in my mind, just the way he's standing or whatever.
I remember it as like almost. There was this cowboy thing. Like I was like, because he's got boots on. You know what I'm saying? Does he have the boots on in that? Then that.
I think he's wearing Chuck Taylors.
Okay, all right.
But I could be wrong.
But he has the long hair and the beard. It's like, and it's dark.
Yep.
It's like,
It's serious, dude. It's like Detroit rock and roll.
and all those metal
In Boston, I think, wasn't it? Isn't that where? Is it in Boston or Philly?
guys in Boston, I
I
believe.
think so.
But he thinking of now, like all those metal guys, they totally ripped off
Oh yeah.
that look.
Oh, totally, man.
Totally ripped that look off.
Totally, man. I mean, except for the tights.
Except for the tights. Well, now, maybe now. Who knows?
Yeah, right?
So, yeah.
Oh,
So Bob Seger to what? Like, all right. So where did Bob Seger and the metal stuff come in? Like, what's the connection between? Since we're talking about that, like,
well, I think my first kind of adventure into metal, the first record I remember really listening to was I remember seeing. We lived in Florida when I was a kid for a minute, and I remembered seeing there on the back of people's windshields and stuff Metallica, and I think it was before maybe even Kill 'Em All,
early on.
early on, and then when I got to Illinois, somebody had given me like a demo that had like Hit the Lights on it, and it was like it was on a cassette, but it wasn't Kill 'Em All. It was before that. Although I think Kill 'Em All was out, and then my cousin Tim got turned on somehow to Ride the Lightning, and he was like, "You got to check this out." And from there, it was downhill. It was like, and I hate to be the guy that said, "Oh, Metallica." But that's the truth of the matter. When you stay in a small town, like there's all this world out there of awesomeness, but you're only getting.
And this is too before mass media. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but there were times in my life where we couldn't afford cable, so that we were excluded
Oh,
for
yeah,
a
dude.
certain big part of
Yeah.
popular culture. I mean, even when you had to start paying for to see MTV,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I had to wait till I went to my grandparents' house to see
Yep.
it.
It was a long time before we got it, and then I think Dad had finally had enough with just network television, and it was the one big splurge.
Fuck it, we're gonna have
yeah,
cable.
we got to have something because I need to watch Monty Python and Benny Hill.
That's good, man.
You know?
That's good. That's
I got to
good.
have BBC.
BBC,
So
that's good. Yeah, my granddad was a big Lawrence Welk and Benny Hill guy
Yep.
too. So
I remember staying up late with Dad, and that would be what we'd watch is Benny Hill, and one of them came on right before the other one. I don't remember which is which, but I think came on around 10 or 11 o'clock, at night. And so we'd stay up and watch those.
So back to Metallica. So that was one of those. It was just like, oh my god!
It was like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, people were doing it. Like, this is, because I'd already been into, like, even before all the well, not before the John Mellencamp thing, but when we stayed in Florida, I remember going dumpster diving as a kid. I'd find like Playboys and all kinds of good stuff in there.
Treasure box.
Yeah, my brother found like a horn that he had for years and years, and I found records. I found Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti.
Oh,
I found Van Halen's Diver Down, and I remember taking them home and spinning them because Dad had a record player or whatever, and saying to Dad, I found these new bands. You're not going to believe it.
and he's like, those aren't new bands.
He's like, you know what I mean? Like, so that was kind of like the first experience as far as heavy music, you know, and even back then, like Black Sabbath was like something that in my mind was like satanic.
Sure, and even like the Zeppelin was
AC/DC was,
yeah, all that stuff
you
was you know, because growing up in the youth group, as a teenager, when that stuff was really popular,
oh yeah,
or even like preteen, even, you know, they did all those seminars at church about playing things backwards.
mm-hmm.
And,
oh yeah,
you
all
know,
the backmasking
all
and
the
stuff, and they were playing like
backmasking and
Queen's. What song was it? And Backmass, it was "It's Fun to Smoke Marijuana."
oh, it was
Another One Bites the Dust.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
It's
right.
fun to smoke marijuana.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
It is. So thanks.
Turns out they were right.
Yeah. So even Stairway to Heaven, I was scared to listen to that until
Yeah.
I was almost an adult.
Oh yeah, because it was like, you know, it's witchy or whatever. You know, it's all about, you know, one of them moved into Anton LaVey's. You know,
Well, there's some like I did.
and there's a lot of truth though.
There's a lot of that
Oh,
truth.
yeah.
So one of the things that I did a big project, and right before we moved back from New York, it's called the Hammers Project, where I brought Jimmy Page back to life and made the dragon suit, the black dragon
Right.
suit, and a friend of mine played him. He was like always an idol, tall, skinny guy, put a
Right.
wig on him, the whole thing, and all that. And what I do in projects is I just completely like overload reference. You know, so I
Right.
read
Oh, yeah.
books. I read, you know, Hammer of the Gods. I've got a great Jimmy Page a biography somebody else wrote about him,
Really?
and like his relationship with Kenneth Anger, and like there's like, you know, the moving into the Anton LaVey's house,
Right.
like that was all like it really, it's almost how would you say it's mythology now.
Right.
But as a kid, you're like you hear all that stuff.
Oh,
You're
you
like,
hear all of it.
oh,
You're
he's
like, and
he's-
it's always from somebody, not a source that you should trust.
right.
You know what I mean? It's always from somebody who's trying to steer you, like, you don't want to get into this. You know, it's going to be bad. If you listen to that, you're going to start worshiping the devil.
Right, yeah,
You
you're
know.
gonna, yeah, exactly.
And I
Like,
stayed in a small town where, like, some of that shit was real, dude. Like, you know, there was this old brickyards
uh-huh.
that you could go into. There's a story for some other time that Saul and I ended up getting arrested at for trespassing. We went back there to take some photos
Uh-huh.
because it was super cool back there. It was like, but they obviously did some sort of satanic shit back there because it was like, you know, pentagrams and blood on the wall and you
Real
know,
blood, not paint.
It's hard to remember,
Okay,
to
fair
be
enough.
honest. But
As
at
a
the
kid,
time,
you're like-
at the time, I was just like, you know, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
You know, and like,
scared.
yeah, and all kinds of crazy stuff out there, and you know, and D&D was huge at the time,
Oh, okay.
and everybody was like, you know, if
Yeah,
you
that
do
was too like.
yeah.
That was like.
And now I'm trying to teach my kids. You know what I'm saying? Like
Okay.
it's so ridiculous, and you know, hindsight.
I know, right? Well, some movies too. Like there are some movies that were like, don't watch these movies because they're, like, you know, John Cougar. Back to that real quick is, you know, Footloose was seeing that as a kid. It was like, you know, that because it was like looking on the soundtrack of Footloose. Who's that guy? You know,
Oh, yeah.
and then going to get that.
I saw that at the drive-in, dude.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of those movies. You know, I grew up in church as well, so
Yeah.
But it was the VHS when we get the membership at the video store. That was the one.
Right.
Was one of the movies that we.
Did you always go to the same church?
I did. I did go to the same church. We went to Jackson Creek Baptist right down the street here. I guess from I was probably like 7 or 8. My parents started going consistently. My mom played the organ there.
Oh, okay.
So that's one of the reasons she went there. And I want to say there she took that job for the stipend, like the money they paid originally. And my dad didn't go forever, and then finally started going. And then it was just like every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You know, we were
Right.
there. You know, that type of thing. And probably until I was early high school, and that's when I had my rebelling stage,
Right.
all that stuff. What about you? How's
I've been every denomination known to man, pretty much. I think, like early on, my folks were part of for lack of a better word, a commune sort of thing. Jesus movement, early '70s, and there's a place called the farm or the barn. I think it was a barn, and I remember going there as a kid, and my dad was part of the elders.
Okay.
And not culty stuff, just like first century church kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like several different. There were several different pastors so that they could keep accountable and stuff. And I remember going there, and then we moved from there, and we were Baptist for a minute in Massachusetts, and we were Church of God, which is the denomination that both my mom and my dad's parents kind of came out of that denomination.
For those of you that tell those that was Church of God, explain that to them. I know what it is, but I want to hear it from your perspective.
Well, they were part of the sect that came out of Anderson, Indiana.
Okay.
And my grandfather was to some degree, like a circuit pastor for a minute. He settled in different churches for certain amounts of time or whatever. But the denomination as a whole is pretty conservative. Like growing up at my grandparents' house, they didn't have cards.
They didn't have cars.
Cards. Playing cards.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I get it.
yeah.
I get it. I get it. When me and my wife got married, we were on a honeymoon, and we were at a gas station. I bought a pack of playing cards with Budweiser on it, going, yeah, I won.
Yeah.
Because that was not only to have the playing cards, but
yeah,
they
right,
had
but had
Budweiser
beer on
it
it
too. That's so good.
So
Good.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you. So, what was the church services like compared to other churches for the Church of God? Were they different?
They just seem like a mausoleum. I mean, they're just dead. It was like all older generation people. However, when we did go to the Church of God, they had a booming youth group at the time.
Oh, okay.
That's where I did some of my first drugs. But it was very conservative. Like a typical service was like, walk in and there's ushers that are handing you pamphlets to give you the order of service, and no kneeling or anything like that, but standing for every song and singing like all four verses of like
Just
4 or
as
5 songs. Yeah.
Just as I am.
It was
over
ridiculous.
And over and over again.
My dad was like, "You want to entertain yourself? Look through the hymnal, and flip the pages, and put under the sheets behind every title. The old rugged cross under the sheets. Just as I am under the sheets.
My wife actually, because she hasn't. This is the first time you guys met today, but she's had an opportunity to hang out with Saul and talk to Brenda, I think, one time. But she was like, "You mean Zach? If I played the old rugged cross on there, he could be able to sing it and play with it?" I was like, "Yeah, probably better, but I don't know if he'd want to." So, dude, that's not asked.
Right. Funny enough, we did and Saul came and visited when I lived here years ago. I was recording a record with Todd Mathis.
Okay.
And it was a gospel record.
Okay. But that was not Dewey's.
No, this was just a Zach and Todd one-off thing.
Gotcha.
And he wrote half the songs and I wrote half the songs, but we came together for the Old Rugged Cross.
Oh, that's
and we
cool.
did it a cappella, and Saul was in town. And so he sings on that.
Does he really?
Yeah, it's crazy. This has been years ago, but it just so happened he was in town for like 2 weeks. He came to visit or something and was hanging out with us. And I think they were thinking about moving here years ago, and he was coming to kind of scope it out, and they ended up not moving here.
So since we're on the subject, this is definitely not on the notes per se, but so are there some religious or hymns that you like the Old Rugged Cross that you go back to, like they're still relevant with all your musical tastes and everything? Are there some tunes that you could find in a Baptist hymnal that are?
There are, I couldn't tell you the names of most of them, but I could
Okay.
flip through a hymnal and I would recognize tons of them, and not just recognize them, but know the melodies and stuff. My mom directed choirs at a couple of the churches that we went to.
Okay.
And was always involved in the music programs and stuff. So the most of the gospel that I take from is stuff that my grandparents played, which were more old Appalachian mountain gospel songs. We get together every Christmas and everybody break out the instruments. It was almost like Archie Bunker, only Archie was playing the guitar and was a very quiet man. But Edith was on the piano. My grandma, Reba.
Reba?
Reba and Irvin.
Perfect.
And he played an old hummingbird that my mom's got now.
Oh, that's a gorgeous
It's
guitar.
a beautiful guitar. And she played an old honky-tonk upright piano. I shouldn't say honky-tonk is church piano, but that's what it was.
Right.
And, she'd play along, and different people would bring out guitars and stuff, and we'd do, just old gospel tunes. We also did like, I'll Fly Away and
Yeah,
Amazing Grace, all the ones that everybody can chime in on. And
yeah, those are my favorites. Like they're the Carter family was a big part of.
Yeah, it was a lot of that kind of stuff. It was like, but with this crazy kooky church piano behind it, which was awesome. I've got a bunch of recordings.
I've heard Zach's. Saul's let me hear a couple. He's like had a couple of them. I don't know how he got a hold.
Yeah, there's 4 volumes in all.
That's what it is. I've heard some of that stuff, and it is amazing.
Yeah, it's really, really kooky and cool.
And I mean, guys, we're not just saying that. I know music well, and like these guys were really talented people.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. Well, Granddad was offered to go on the Lawrence Welk show,
Get out of
the
town.
traveling Lawrence Welk show, as a picker, but conviction wise,
couldn't pull the trigger.
couldn't pull the trigger, man. That's how devout. He was known as Honest Irv.
Honest Irv.
Known as Honest Irv. He was a mechanic his whole life, and after he retired, he still had a shed, and people would bring stuff way out to him in the country because he was just known for being fair and not taking anybody for a ride. Yeah, farmhouse sold a few years ago,
but not letting people take advantage of it.
No, I mean, he was a stern man, a big man that was just really quiet and conservative. But I think, there's always this underlying, very serious but kind. You know what I mean? I don't remember having a lot of conversations with him. I remember being around him a lot.
Walk softly, carry a big stick type
That's it.
guy.
Yeah.
Got you. That's cool. We were talking about how important it is to have conversations with people, meaningful conversations with people that are trying to inform your ideas as an artist. You were talking about outside. But why do you look for things that are criticisms that are challenging, conversations that are challenging when it comes to your work?
I do. A lot of times, at least in music, you're at a club or something like that, and some of the things are that people want to tell you about your stuff is like not welcomed
At a club.
Yeah, at a club.
Okay.
But I do welcome them to some degree. You know what I mean? But usually the ones that aren't welcomed is like some drunk dummy.
Drunk fan.
Yeah. You guys are great. You should have some fiddle in there.
Okay. Yeah.
I could hear a keyboard in there, whatever, but beyond that, we were talking about, there's no bad publicity.
Yeah, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
And I do agree with that. I mean, I think, if you get your fill of bad publicity all the time, maybe it's time to really look at it. But the what I've experienced is like, we had this record wrote up by several different publications or whatever, and hopefully we'll get a lot more. I mean, it's kind of just the beginning. It's only been out a couple months now.
Right.
But most all of it's been really, really good and kind. All of it has been, actually. But there has been some critiques about it that I find some people get really angry at when somebody says, well, like in our case, the record was great. I loved it. It's very cohesive. Sounds great. However, I'd like to see more growth in these areas. Like there's these shiny parts that set this song is really set apart from this song because they did this. And that only happens a couple of times throughout the course of the record. And, some people would get really angry and say, well, I put all this work into it or whatever. But if you can't hear those things, even though it's one guy's opinion, surely he's not the only one. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's something that we've talked about even before the article came out. So it's something that we weren't.
It's not that you weren't aware of.
Yeah, it's something that we weren't aware of or anything like that. But it was nice. In a weird way, it was nice to have somebody else who had the balls to say.
But it's also it's a refreshing thing as well, because you're like, yeah, I was right.
Yeah.
I was right.
I was right.
I knew it.
Damn it.
Now, but you can't go back. That's what people used to ask in art school, like, when do you know a painting's done? When do you know a song is done? A song can live in so many different ways.
Oh,
so, yeah. And I'm sure also as you play these songs and the live going forward, that will change them as well.
Sure.
Do you keep that other stuff in mind as you replay these songs and maybe play up some of those things that worked well?
Yeah, I mean, live we've started. It's kind of weird because we were in a band not even a year before we recorded the record.
Right. Yeah.
So it happened really, really quick. Yeah. And so a lot of bands live inside their songs for a minute and play them out live and really try and work out the kinks. And we didn't take any of those luxuries. The songs were the songs. And everybody fell in, and we really had an idea what we wanted them to sound like. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there was definitely like a very well thought out, like sonically, this is what we want, and this is the direction we want to go, and stuff like that. However, we hadn't had a chance to really live in them. So now, a couple months later, I feel like every time we play, those so-called shiny moments are becoming parts in every song, because there's, we've had.
You're like, oh, I could do this right here.
Yeah,
let's do this right here. Let's do that instead of that.
Yeah, I mean, and I rely a lot on.
Yeah, those guys in the band.
I mean, the guys in my band
are
are
steep musicians.
Really,
sure.
really incredible. I'm very, very fortunate, but blessed. Actually,
sure. I think that it was. Yeah, you could. I think you guys definitely captured lightning in the bottle with it, with all those guys. Because then it's funny because you've been in the peripheral for years of each other.
I mean, we've all kind of. Yeah, I mean, everybody's been in each other's circles. You know what I mean? For years, it seems. Probably me and Todd being the least. Sure. Like Jim Taylor's been around for years. I mean, he stays in Charlotte, but he's a legend around here. And John Furr, the same thing, lived here and has been involved and stepped out of music for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And then is recently back and
doing
goodness. All kinds of crazy shit with music,
yeah.
And Stan, he's played in God knows all kinds of stuff, had his own, Buck Stanley, and done his own thing and played in punk rock and playing in the Wage Slaves still. So, I moved away and Todd didn't really know any of these guys. And I knew him on the peripheral, and somehow...
Hey, let's go play. Did it come one piece at a time?
Well, it was me and Todd at first.
Right.
Because I was playing... me and Fred from the Mustache Brothers put together this honky-tonk band. And we had... Todd bought a pedal steel to play in that band. He'd never played before. He just bought one and decided that he was going to do it. He played dobro a little bit. So once that took its journey. We were together for, I don't know, maybe a year, and just kind of fizzled out, you know. And at the moment it was fizzling out, I was like, I saw it fizzling out, and I was like, I can't not do something, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, fucking 40, now 45, but you know, then I was 44.
Right.
And I was like, you know, I got to do something. And so I asked Todd if he would record with me, and he was like, oh man, I'm not a very good pedal steel player. You know, I just don't want to do this. Really, I mean, I'm honored. I really want to, but I'm afraid I'll make it sound like shit. And I was like, dude, you get it. You get it.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to play with a pedal steel player.
Yeah, they're
So-
my favorites for sure. Man.
So come on, man. And he was like, all right. So we did that EP, and then John Furr approached Todd, which is strange. And he was like, hey, I hear some parts on some of the songs on the EP. Would you know, how do you feel about getting together? And let me talk to you guys about it and maybe play with you. So we got together once, and it was magic. And John was like, Stan's the guy. Stan's the guy.
He knew before
Yeah.
he got there that day. That,
And I'd already asked Stan to play with something else
okay.
earlier in the year, and he was too busy. So I was like, you know, probably not. And he heard the songs and heard John was involved, and he wasn't playing really much with anybody at the time.
So he was like, all right.
And he was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot, you know. And that was magic. We recorded the record without a bass player.
Oh, really?
Yeah, John played the bass parts, and we got Jim maybe a month after the record.
Oh, cool.
So,
I did not know that.
Yeah, which has been awesome, man. I mean, that guy's ridiculous. I mean, I can't say how kind and awesome the guys I play with are. I'm really, really, really fortunate.
But
It's like a family.
yeah, I hear you.
You know?
So with that said, like, are there any? We're talking about having conversations. How does that happen with the band? With the conversations, is it
The conversations are great. We have our little tiffs here and there. you know,
good? Good.
but you know, it's nothing. It's usually thought out over messaging. We have a band messenger
Uh-huh.
account or whatever, and so we message back and forth, and everybody lets everybody know. Like, I totally disagree, or okay, this is something I'm willing to bend on, you know. And so far, even though there's been issues that haven't been easy, so far everybody has been able to be cool with saying, okay, I'll default. You know, I'm not crazy about this. I'll default.
That's how I feel. Just
Yeah. Well, it's like the Jim Smith thing that we played at Hunter Gatherer Hangar.
yeah.
I'm not super politically involved, but I'd like to see a change here. That being said, and they were like, hey, you want to do this Jim Smith thing? And I was like, you know, it's really close.
I don't know.
We play Jam Room Fest the week before.
Yeah, you did.
You know, and I'm like, I'm not interested in playing more than, I mean, once a month is like a lot locally. Like, you know, we're stepping off, actually, after November. It's going to be a minute, you know. We got an EP release coming out. But, yeah, I was like, my vote is no. Straight up, like, you know. It's not that I don't like the guy. It's not that I don't want to see him in office or anything. But I was like, it's a week after we play Jam Room Fest, and you know, and there was a couple guys that were like, you know, I know him, and he's a really good dude. And as it turns out, I met him and got a good chance to talk with him, and he is an awesome dude. But you know, you have to be willing to bend. You know what I mean? It's like just like, even though I'm the songwriter, it doesn't make me the dictator.
Sure. That's when bands fall apart.
It is, man. You got to give everybody their fair. You know, it's different. Like you're a solo. You
Right.
make the calls. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
and
Which is different. It's
yeah,
a
and
totally different thing. You know?
And that's why I'm a little jealous of that, because I do have people I go to. No, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
There are people I go to, but they're not somebody that's here every time I pull an idea out to create. You know,
Right.
that I have to provide that for myself somehow, and I seek it out.
Right.
Sometimes it happens. The band, the conversations and how they form are much because logistical base and
Right.
But back to the idea of having these creative dialogues, because you have those conversations that are logistical, there's nuts and bolts, and you know how to get along. It's a lot easier to navigate that water when you're like, "Sorry, man, that song ain't doing it."
Yeah. Well, I've brought a couple, that one of them I was fairly proud of, and the other one, it was a hit or miss. You know what I mean? I was really proud of it when I played it at the house, but I probably had a few drinks in me.
Okay.
And when I took it there and played it for them, I was like, wow, this is just. I mean, I had to shut myself off.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And they were like, this sounds really good. I'm having a good. I'm just like,
Not yet.
not yet. Maybe one day. I've never even strummed it one time since then. You know what I mean? It just was like a self-defeating moment for me. But, there are times where John's like, or John is probably the most vocal and honest. He's also probably the most experienced as a producer, hearing things. And so I always take his lead, you know what I mean? Even though they're my songs. He'll even, this last week, which ruffles my feathers. This last week, there's a song that it's a new song that I went over there and we were playing through the new songs. And the lyric is, I was just a man when I made 13 years old. And played through it. He was like, man, I really like the song. But don't you think you ought to change man to boy? And, that kind of thing. Generally, I don't.
Did it bother you?
Yeah, but I was like, oh, but goddamn it, he's right. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, so
Wow.
it just. I mean, I like man better, but the song it's more cohesive. It's for the song, just like it's for the art piece.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure that there's things that you do.
Oh man,
that you're like, this is such a fucking drag, and I like this better, but this is what people want to see, and this is going to make a better product.
Yeah, man. The editing process, it works that. Like even the Boo Hag project, for example, there were so many times I was sitting at the editing board going, I got to cut that. I don't want to cut that. I love it.
Yep.
But in the bigger scheme of things,
It's got to go.
it's got to go, man. And some days it's easier some days to go in and say, nope, and be completely objective. But then other days you get tied to this thing you created, and it's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I don't know.
Terrible, dude. In my case, I'll bring a song, and it'll sound great, but it'll either need a verse or need one dropped. And, that's kind of a hard, because you write it, just like I'm sure it happens with you, you might come back and tinker a little bit, but in your mind, once it's complete, it's complete.
Yeah.
And to try and add to it after that, when your mind's not in the space of working that particular song or drawing or whatever, is really difficult for me. You know
agree.
what I mean?
But I think that's also too, like, really at the core of a creative process. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like you're conjuring up something out of nothing, and and then you become a certain attached to it. And
Right.
You have a relationship to it. You can call it snowblind or whatever. Like you have to have space from that creative thing.
And there's times where it's hard for me to let it go.
You obsess. No, I obsess.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I obsess.
No, it needs to be like this. It's like,
Yeah, man. Yeah. I'll walk in, say I'm done, and then 15 minutes later I'm back out. I got to figure something out.
No, that's the way with me on the back porch, dude. I'll carry my guitar back and forth outside to inside like 6 times in an evening. I'm done. Set it down, go in the kitchen, wander around for a minute, kind of pace, thinking about everything, and can't get it off my mind. And I'm like, oh, got an idea. Back out the back door. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I deal with it all the time, man. Like, for example, that drawing right there, it's sitting there just so I can start to live with it a little bit.
Right.
It's like it's not quite done, but I got to live with it for a minute. And just
I do the same thing, man. But when it's done,
When it's done, it's done.
yeah,
Well, the good thing about drawings like that, once they're sprayed, it's
right.
It's sprayed. You're like, I can't. There's no checking that off. This for a second. What, in your writing and in your life, because of a lot of different reasons, you encounter grace or talk about grace. How do you define grace? And does it inform your music?
It totally informs my music. It totally does. Grace is, by definition, something that is unmerited, that you don't deserve. You know, and I've learned a lot from my kids. You know, being able to, especially my son, because he's a wild ass or whatever, and from a father's perspective, I get really bent out of shape over stupid stuff, like
That he's done?
that he's doing, whether he's being wild or, and that in my own life, in comparison, you know, we all want grace. We all want the unmerited forgiveness of somebody. Unmerited. We don't have to do anything for it. You know what I mean? Like, we as people, I believe, that we all not only desire it, but need it. You know? And if, talking about Christianity or whatever people believe or whatever, but, if I expect to be forgiven and have somebody forgive me, then I've got to extend the same courtesy. You know what I mean? It's
hard to do.
It's a big wheel. It's a big wheel,
It's
man.
hard to do that though, because we get
That was super hard.
We in our nature we're not that.
No, we're not.
We're vindictive and vengeful.
We're not. And that's the. I think that's the juxtapose in a lot of my songs. Is like, I can't have grace, but I'm given grace. You know what I mean? And trying to find the line that toes. Like, how can I? Like I've got a friend here in town who believes completely the opposite of, that I do on politics. However, believes in the same God. And that creates a problem for me, personally, because I think Christianity has a black eye on its own, without
anyways help.
Yeah, without having people be hateful that say that they're of the same faith. And it's not even so much that he was hateful; it's just the rhetoric and stuff. And I had to, it was a Facebook thing or whatever. I got on there and I was like, I'm tired of your unbelievable bullshit. I'm out. And it haunted me for a day and a half. That I was angry at him for not having a Christ-like response. And then I acted like that.
Holier than thou.
Yeah. Like, not even holier than thou, just basically saying he's full of shit, and so, I had to apologize, you know what I mean? Like, and he extended grace, you know what I mean? I didn't have to grovel, and there's something really beautiful about that, there's something redeeming about that, and that's what I try and incorporate in my songs, like this, because people need to hear a different gospel.
Sure.
The days of, repent or die, fags are going to hell, and You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, that's not Jesus.
Yeah, it's bigger. It's bigger
Yeah.
than that.
It's way bigger than that. And, people, I think, long to see an authentic Christianity that's broken. It's not perfect.
Well, yeah,
You know?
like that's a great. You're right, because if you're looking at it from Jesus' perspective,
Who did he hang with?
yeah. But what I'm saying is like his example is not human.
Right.
His disciples' example was human. They're flawed, tortured individuals.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know?
And so
All of them were fucked up.
Yeah.
All 12
Do you
of
have a
them.
favorite?
Probably Peter's my favorite.
Like Peter?
Yeah. Just because he's so broken. You know what I mean? But he was also the rock.
Yeah.
But
He was definitely like a Job type character.
yeah, I mean, he wanted to get it right so badly and constantly got it wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he denied,
Yeah, probably there was a, and then
denied
chose
Christ.
not to kill himself.
Yeah.
Live
And that's
the
the
li-
beautiful
live the-
thing.
Live
It's
with
like,
that. So is grace? What about? I mean, listen. What about the idea of feeling some guilt for having grace? Like, I don't even deserve grace. Is that there? I mean, do you have any reference points to somebody's point of view that would say that or deal with that? Like, I don't deserve this grace that I'm given.
oh yeah, I can totally identify with that. But
Is that just so? That's part of the process.
I think it is. It's like you have to, in order to receive something like, grace, you got to realize that you're fucked up to begin with.
Yeah, there's no winning.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's like
Right.
I mean, it's like otherwise it's not grace. It's just something that you expect. You know what I mean? Like or think that you're owed.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I can identify with that for sure. I think that has to be part of the process to understand what grace. Don't get me wrong. I don't think you should flog yourself.
No,
Not worthy or anything like
No.
But I think that it's definitely part of the process of being like this is something undeserved, and with that, unfortunately, I think comes at least some sort of guilt. I don't know if you want to call it guilt. I don't know if guilt is the right word, but like there's definitely a.
You definitely feel if you're conscious of it and aware enough to go be experienced with that, what's going with
Right.
that feels like. There has to be. I don't know about guilt, but you don't feel worthy.
Right. And I think, sometimes it's like with that thing I was talking about with my buddy here in Columbia. As Christians, we call it conviction. You know
Holy
what I mean?
Spirit.
Yeah, I'm just convicted about this, man. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, but that's guilt to some degree. I mean,
It is.
It's a similar emotion anyway. It's close enough.
It's also to how you look at it.
Yeah, I
You know what I'm
think
saying?
guilt is
Like-
something that is somewhat self-imposed, where being convicted is something that's spiritually imposed. If that makes any sense.
Yes. It makes
Uh,
total sense.
And I think I was convicted.
Also, too, to take action and try to make it right.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's one thing to feel guilty and go, beat yourself up, flog yourself, like I said, but not take initiative and correct the situation. And not only prove to someone else, but also prove to yourself that you've learned from your mistake.
Right. Right. At least try.
Yeah.
It's like, well, not only that, but I just have a hard time having time to be angry with people anymore.
Yeah, I listen and hear a lot more because I'm in here so much working that. All right. So you were just saying that you just don't have time to be angry with anybody anymore. I heard this. I'm in here a lot, and I get to listen to every podcast in the world. It seems like.
Right.
But there's this guy named Seth Godin who's talking about like what it means to be like productively creative or creatively productive. And he said that it's a great quote. I forgot who said this, but he said you can't be creative and angry at the same time. Or you can't be curious and angry at the same time. And if you want to be creative, you've got to always be curious.
Right.
And I thought that's really like something that I've kind of kept in the back of my head. When something pisses me off or somebody gets under my skin or a situation like, just getting things done, you get frustrated with the world.
Right.
You're like, man, I just ain't got time to be angry
No.
today.
And, I think the anger and art in a lot of ways hold hands.
They do. They do. But it can't be destructive to the point where it keeps you from making the work.
No, I think for me, I can think of 2 songs off the top of my head that I wrote when I was really angry. And I think they're both great songs. But that was it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm angry. I'm going to write this because I'm angry and get it out. And
It's a catharsis.
it is. And when I sing those songs, I get angry all over again. I remember why I wrote them. But it's not the same. It's not the initial anger. It's like almost like taking a pill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay, that's why I wrote this, and I've learned this from that, and it's a good process. I don't.
It's not like reimagining it and screaming and saying, I was done wrong.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. It's, and some of them are. One was a personal dream of two, or not dream of two. Well, that whole early Dewey stuff was totally out of anger because I was going through a divorce.
Of course, yeah.
But the one song, "Send Me Flowers," I wrote that when I was angry as hell.
That's
I was
a good
angry
tune
with my
there,
sister.
man. Oh, okay.
And
That's a different kind of anger.
yeah, I was super angry at her.
It's a different kind of anger than your lover or partner or
Yeah.
whatever. It's a different kind of anger.
And the other one was one that has yet to be recorded that we're working on as a recent tune called, I think it's going to be called Rosa Parks, but it's more of social anger.
Is there, if we're going to make a point back to the beginning, is that like Springsteen type stuff? Could we make that? I haven't heard it, so I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm making in the back of my head connections of songs that might, or artists that have that type of.
Yeah, it's definitely politically charged. I mean,
John Mellencamp was not much politically charged. Per se.
no, I mean, other than Farm Aid, I saw him. Funny, I saw this thing Chris Bickle posted. I don't know, a couple weeks ago or whatever. It was at Farm Aid, and John Mellencamp got up there and did a tirade, dude, like just angry political
Really?
rant, yeah. Which was, I was like, holy cow, look at him go, that's awesome,
Cool. He didn't make a fool of himself.
No, not at all. He was up there with Willie and Neil Young, and it's kind of awkward to watch because it's like Willie's sitting back there, like almost like he's just not even.
Like, I don't know if I like being
yeah,
right now.
and Neil Young is like, woo, he's like, do the damn thing, It's like,
do the damn thing. That's right, do the damn thing.
It's hilarious, but yeah.
So back to the political anger. What are those? Where is there influenced by anything that? Or is it just like getting it out right now?
I think that I think it's the one and only song I've ever written to date that's politically charged at all. I'm not generally that guy. It's all personal experience stories and that kind of thing. But this one, is definitely definitely different. And I don't know what. I think it's I don't know if it's I'm getting older or what, but I'm just paying more attention, I guess, to what's happening.
You're hearing the clock.
Yeah.
The clock's ticking for you.
Yeah.
You
I do.
I hear it.
I do hear it, dude.
Yeah, I'm 43,
It's like,
so I hear
you know.
it. I think when I turned 40, um, it started to creep in. But I think when I turned 42, it was like, all right, something's got to change. And it was last year. I was like, all right, if I'm going to do this thing, I got to do it. And that clock ticking, it makes you jump off the boat, start swimming.
It's scary, dude. It is scary, man. It's like, you know, I've been married 11 years now, and you know, when I met my wife, I was playing in Due East, and I told her, I was like, you know, we recorded this record. Nothing happens, I'm fucking done. You know, I'm done. Like, I'm tired of trying to put bands together and it just be a babysitting job. You know, it's like not necessarily, not with the band necessarily, but like it was always anything I ever put together. It was always 100% on me, trying to get everybody together. You know, they're my songs, whatever. I don't know what I expected, but you know, it was always difficult. Like it was always trying to round people up, and then you know, everybody's got different schedules, this, that, and the other, and then, you know, I'd do the next recording, not with Due East, but with this other band, and I'd be like, if this doesn't work, I'm done. And then the next band. And if this doesn't work, I'm fucking done. You know what I mean? And it's like, at some point, you've got to accept that you don't have a choice when you're somebody like me and like you. You know, it's like, you know, at some point, you know, Saul was telling me he went to go see some band. Columbia. I was at the show. It was, I don't know if it was Dexter Romweber maybe or somebody like that. I said, you guys are great. Don't ever stop. He said, we can't. It's not a choice I have. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably the most frustrating thing to my wife.
Really?
Yes.
Because you say you're going to quit, but you never do?
No, yeah, exactly. Like, she just, she loves me and she supports me 100%. And she knows I would be miserable not doing it. But I think somewhere inside her, she wishes that I wouldn't be miserable not doing it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
She sees the potential. And like I said, she's so supportive and everything. But, you know, it's hard for wives.
It is.
You know, it's really hard.
Yeah, that, you know, but the support that they give you in your manic creative state and how everything's coming apart, you're like, that makes
a huge difference.
It makes a huge difference when you have somebody that really truly supports you. Like, all right, if you're gonna quit, I'll go quit.
Yeah, right.
I don't hear you bitching about it.
Yeah, right.
You know about it after you quit. So either do it or not, man. Do the deal. If you're not, I don't want you to don't bellyache about it.
That's exactly it.
Don't bellyache about it. Move on. Like there have been times that both me and my wife she'll do something like professional, like put her out on a limb, and then not get it or go bad or whatever, and we'll say you got 24 hours. Feel sorry for yourself for 24 hours, and then that's it. You got to pull it back together. You got to come back in here and got to do the work and move forward. And I gloat sometimes when I do it to her, man, but when she does it to me, it fucking stings, man.
Oh, dude.
It stings. You're like, you're right. Like John Furr in that song that you're talking about. Is that same kind of thing? Like, you're like, you're right.
You're right.
God
damn it.
Damn it. Yeah. You know, I thought about something outside, too. We were talking about how to play guitars and stuff. So have you had, I don't know if you had, talk about gear. Have you ever had a chance to talk about gear at all? Like, you have preference in gears? Like, you have things you've just kind of accumulated over the years? And like,
I'm a solid K guitar guy.
Okay.
Like, that's all I play. Old Ks, like late 60s, early 70s probably. I have two Ks, and I've got a Del Oro, which was made by K. It's a parlor guitar. For somebody who doesn't have a lot of money and loves vintage guitars, it's the best bang for your buck.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they just sound great. You know what I mean? Like the one I'm playing now is my workhorse. I paid $300 for it.
Oh wow.
You know, off a reverb, and it's badass. You know, I don't know why I'm taken with them. My wife bought me my first one from my buddy Jeremy when we got married. It was like a wedding gift, and I played it for years and years, and just over the past couple years, it needs so much work and stuff. I got to find somebody special to do something with it. So
what's wrong with it?
What's not wrong with it? It's
Okay.
well, I mean, it plays. You know, it's my extra guitar. If I bust a string on the one I'm playing, it's the one I pull out.
Is it crooked or anything?
A little bit. It's got some intonation problems, and it needs setup, and the back saddle's pulling up a little bit. I've already had it done once, so you know, it's a beautiful guitar. It's much prettier than the one I'm playing, but
You
and
just don't care. It's coming apart.
yeah, I just don't want to play it into oblivion. You know what I mean? It still sounds good,
Right.
you know, but it needs work. It wouldn't be good for a workhorse guitar that I could take out and play all the time.
So you're definitely a one guitar guy.
Yeah. I mean, if I had the money, it would be different. But
If you had the money, what would you get?
I'd probably look at really old Gibsons.
I like Gibsons, man.
I love
Everybody's a
Gibsons.
Martin guy or
Everybody's a
Taylor
Martin
guy.
guy,
Martin guy, Taylor. But man, many times I've gone into Guitar Center, into the acoustic room, and been like, I want that one.
I like the baseball neck on a Gibson.
Yeah, me
you
too.
know,
And I've tried them all. You know what I'm saying? Like if you give me the Pepsi Challenge, I take a Gibson.
I mean, I love Martin. All the guys that
They're great guitars.
all the Mustache Brothers guys, they're like Martin guys.
Yeah, I get that. I get it. But that sound that guitar makes is not the kind of acoustic sound I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I think that's the
I want
difference.
something a little bit more bottom end and full.
I think it's a meteor guitar for sure. Absolutely. So yeah,
My mom's, every time I pick it up, I'm like, I had the money to buy something.
that
like
is,
this.
I can't. I've got to go over there one just to let me strum it. Let me just do
So
an E
good,
chord.
dude.
You know what I'm saying? Just let me.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And I played through a Clark that was built when I played in Due East. The bass player was the sole builder of Clark amps, which I think he still may be. But they moved out of Columbia. I think they're in Atlanta now, or maybe
Somewhere
I think it's
close. Somewhere close.
Yeah, somewhere close. But I traded him a tattoo for it. He built this incredible amp for me. It's heavy as balls, though. I got to figure out something, but it sounds glorious. I mean,
It's heavy though.
it is heavy. It's modeled after an old Bassman.
Okay. So is it you take it on the road with you?
Yeah, right now I've got a
Oh.
Princeton, but it needs some help. I got to take it and get it worked on. I think it's just a tube issue, but the Clark sounds better. The Princeton's badass, but the Clark sounds better for acoustic guitar anyway.
All right. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, just because I know that you're going to have a great reference point to this idea, but one of the things I always go back to with music, especially live music, going out and seeing artists do it in the real is a much different experience than listening to records at home.
Right.
But one of the earliest experience with music I have is that feeling of the hair on the back of your neck standing up, whether it be a word in a song, a verse, or a note someone sings or plays.
Right.
I initially said, what does that mean? I guess the question maybe should be is, why is that important? Because it happens, but why do you think that's important for us as humans or people?
I think the people need the sense of a commonality, that they're not alone, you know. And for me, like if I go out and see a band, it's like last night, you know, played with Kenny George Band and Mac Lepart, and I'd been listening to the last record, it was an EP release for Kenny George. And so they had this new EP on CD or whatever. But I was listening to their full length, which is called, shit, I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, there's a song on there called Falling Down that does just that to me. It's like, oh, damn it. You know, as a songwriter, you see yourself in this certain light, and you don't let it out to anybody, but it's somewhat elitist. You know, you're like, I got this shit. You know, I'm really good at what I do. And when you hear a peer that you know, especially, nail it like that, and write a lyric that you couldn't have written, but it's something that you could have. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Not even as an artist, but as a listener. It's like that's our common experience. That's why when I was a carpenter, or if I was a carpenter, has been covered so many times. Is that there's this commonality that everybody can identify with. I think for me that's what it is anyway. Like there's musical moments, but that's not the
and
same.
also too, that depends on who's doing the song,
right?
And how the music plays into that.
Right.
We're talking about the song, the guitar or the piano playing and singing this on one person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy. Like instrumentals are a totally different thing too. It's like I'll listen to some instrumental stuff and I'll have that same.
It's telling you a story.
Yeah.
It's still telling you the story
right.
without the words.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's harder or easy to do. For me personally, like my limited musical experience, it's like a flip of the coin. Like
right.
I've been able to write songs with words, and then there are a lot of songs that just come to me that are just music.
Right.
But they could have some music songs, but I'm just completely amateur over here. But I understand that process. Like,
well, I mean, I listen to like Ben Walker, as a local musician here, and every now and then he posts something on Facebook or whatever, and I'm not very familiar with his band, but there's something about the way he plays, and his words are always good. There's always something about him that you can relate to in an adolescent sort of way, like almost, when you look at something sometimes and you're like, that reminds me of the fucking hot dog stand at whatever went. You know what I mean? Like that familiarity.
right.
He somehow captures like those Polaroids.
Right. In my work, I think about, I end up getting tied to color combinations, whatever that means. Like, they could be hugely different things. But generally, those color combinations are making me think about something that had an effect on me in the past.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think music can do that too. I think music, I'm real fascinated with this idea of music as it's a sound wave. So and waves have colors, and light waves have colors, and all that stuff. So this idea that certain keys can have a tonality, color wise.
Right.
It's a real interesting idea, and I think maybe when we have those experiences that are just completely enveloping, all that stuff is happening.
Right.
So when we do hear songs,
yeah,
it's all in the same wavelength in a way that you're like, oh. It's almost like a smell you get in your nose.
Oh yeah, it totally is, man.
And you could even you could smell things that aren't there, depending on what songs you're listening to, according to the memory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tom Petty, I think, is who said it, but he said that all the great songs are already written in the sky. It's like a giant radio dial, and you just got to tune into the right one.
Yeah.
And there's something, not that everything can't. There's nothing new under the sun.
Sure.
I mean, it's all been done in some fashion or whatever. I mean, it's up to us to, I guess, make it, plagiarize enough to make it new.
Yeah. It's funny you bring this up because I just had the podcast with Caitlin Bright, and we talked about the exact same thing. Baudelaire's quote, or saying that do not be of your time.
Right.
And that requires a certain understanding of your pedigree. But at the same time, you're adding a different verse to the same song.
Well, and it also, people are always like, a lot of these musicians, they stay so young. They seem so young and in style and stuff. It's because if you want to be relevant, you've got to stick with the times. You've got to at least have some sort of cultural understanding of what's happening in the world. Like, I'm not even talking about politically, although, I think that it's all tied in, culture and politics and stuff. But, if you're not at least trying to be aware, you'll never be relevant. If you're not, I mean, there's always the idiot savant who finds his way out of that and is like the closet guitar player or songwriter, like, what's his name from Neutral Milk Hotel, But, there's several bands that are like that. Basically it's just some crazy dude who pays attention to nothing and is like crazy, but an awesome musician or artist or whatever. There's those people out there. But by and large, like, if you want to be relevant and try and make a living and be effective, you have to be aware of your surroundings and the culture that is coming up around you, because
you have to know where you fit in.
Yeah.
And you have to know what your audience is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, or you're not aware of those things, you can't find your audience.
No.
And you can't,
Yeah, and that can be as big or small as you want to make it, I think.
Sure.
But if effectiveness is, it's like the person who opens a chain of sunglasses and has like every sunglasses known to man, and the guy who opens the buy two for $5 booth. You know what I mean? Like, who's going to make more money? Yeah. It's like, you've got to understand what the deal is, what town you're in, what your demographic is. Like, I'm not saying that I understand any of that shit, but
you have to be willing to make the effort to try.
Yeah, you have to at least look into it and go, what am I doing here? Like, because, I think art for art's sake is great. That sounds like maybe a movement. Maybe it is. I don't know. It sounds like it is.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I'm not speaking about them. Whatever. I'm just saying, like, art for art's sake is one thing, but when you're driven to, like, when you have, you have this goal, and you're trying to push this idea out or whatever, instead of just masquerading this, whatever it is, whether it's songs or paintings or whatever. I mean, I guess whatever it takes to make a living.
Sure.
But at some point, that becomes like a soul-stealing sort of thing. You talk to like all these guys, like when I lived in New Orleans, they're all playing in cover bands, and they're making a killer living. But they hate it.
Right.
Even though it's something that they love. Even though music is what they love, they got into it to play music.
I get that. And for years, I love my friends and I love my family, and when they make suggestions about, well, you should do this or you should do that, it'd be great. But I might as well just go get a job at Walmart. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just work.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It becomes grueling real fast.
Yeah. Well, I've thought about what if I lost my job? I'm not like a highly employable guy. You know what I mean? And what would I do? And the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, learn a bunch of fucking covers and play Wild Wings. You know what I mean? Or these venue places. But I think that I could do that. But I've watched a lot of my friends that try and toe the line. They're good songwriters, really good songwriters, man. But they play these venues all the time, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. But you can't expect the results that you would have if you put all your energy into this, what you love to do. You know, put all your creative energy into what you love to do. I know it doesn't pay anything, you know, but it could.
Could.
It could, you know, and I don't fault anybody for doing it. I mean, you know, end goal is playing music for a living.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the end goal, you know. But what am I willing to do that? You know?
Right.
I'm just not sure I have the answer to that. You know, it's like, I have the answer right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's like if somebody came to you and said, hey, I've got this, project. I need you to make 1,000 of these, and there's going to be more work behind it. There's going to be more work behind it. 1,000 of these that look the same, and everything, and the payday's decent.
Paid, yeah.
You know, the payday's decent. May not make you rich, but the payday's decent. You
Eventually, grind on you.
But as that grows, it's okay when it's like, you know, you do one here and one there, whatever, you know. But when that becomes your living, you know, it just seems to me like that would be terrible.
I agree.
You know, I mean, maybe it wouldn't. I don't know.
I don't think I'm wired like that. I don't think I'm wired like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm definitely not wired. You know what I'm saying? I think if they would come in and say, I really like this and this and this, if you would, you could think about putting it together.
Right.
And then that, I could totally do that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I just personalizing shit.
I want that one over and over and over again, and I don't want to copy. I just want you to do another one.
Right.
You're like, jeez, man.
Yeah.
That would drive you crazy.
It would.
It would drive you crazy, man.
You know, I mean, I don't know. And, you know, maybe I could totally do it and I'd be pretty happy doing it, you know. I'd definitely be happier doing that than I would, you know, fucking stuffing groceries in a bag.
Oh.
You know what I mean? But
I mean, that's almost like, though, if you had to do something for money, I'm one of those guys. I'd rather just figure out something where it's kind of like no responsibility. That's all.
This is like Kevin Spacey. I want the least responsibility possible. You know, it's like
right. I'm like, yeah, that's I could, you know, and then you could be everything else is fine. You know, I mean, if you could have that, that's responsibility, man. You know, having to deal with responsibility is probably the hardest thing about being an adult in general. So
it's hilarious, man.
So talk to me about Columbia and you're you know, everybody I've had on the podcast so far is either from here originally or close by. What about Columbia? Like playing Columbia? Can you talk to me about your experience living here and playing here? And
I lived here. I lived here years ago for like 3 years.
Okay.
Back in like 92, 93, 94. I moved to New Orleans and lived there for, I guess, 6 or 7 years. I left in 2000, so somewhere around there. And moved to Florida. Spent 3 years there, then spent a couple years in Virginia, then back here. And then since I've been back here, I've moved to New Orleans again and been back. And it's odd because, you know, Columbia is an easy place to hate.
Sure.
But people really don't know what they've got with Columbia. Like, it really is a great and easy place to live. And, you know, the arts community is growing by the day. I feel like we're at a kind of a special moment musically in Columbia. You know, I think there's some really stellar acts coming out of this town right now. You know, going to New Orleans, it's like everybody's like, why would you leave New Orleans to come to Columbia? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and, you know, bottom line, the answer is I got kids, and this is a way better place to raise them. You know,
sure.
You know, I love New Orleans, and you know, it's my home away from home. You know, my sister still lives there, so. But Columbia's good, man, and I wish there was. It's happening. There's more venues, the Warmouth and State Street. Um, and now the new Senate, is bringing in big acts.
And then you got the White Mule.
The White Mule just opening up, and which I haven't been in there yet, but we're doing our
I've heard
EP release there.
I've heard great things about the actual space.
Yeah, I've heard it's awesome.
But the only complaint I've heard otherwise is just the parking.
Oh yeah, because it is 5 points.
So that's the only thing that's logistical. But that may change. You never know how that goes.
Yeah, I'm just glad to see him back around. I played some of my first shows in Columbia when the first one was open.
Oh, on Main Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. It closed just when I moved here.
Really?
Yeah, it closed just.
I played twice there, I think. Just solo things because I didn't. That's actually before it was a White Mule. It was a place called Jam and Java.
That's right.
And that's actually where I met Jeremy, which was the start of Due East.
Really?
Was in that space, yeah. It's interesting. I wonder what they're going to do with that space, man. I don't think anything's in there right now. But it's a crazy cool, space to do whatever.
Really?
Yeah, it's so cool down there.
So what else? What else about Columbia? So this is home now.
Yep.
You would definitely call this your launching pad.
Oh yeah, I'm here. I moved my mom here, my brothers, my friends are here, my wife's family's here, well, they're in Ludolf, but.
How does that affect your music career? Does it with the ability to play out and digital downloads and all that? How's that? Does it really today? Does it matter where we live as far as our home base? And how's that? And always have to, I don't know, but not pay homage, but be active in the local community as well.
I don't think it matters as much. I think in the last several years, it's like, I don't know if you remember when dude from Death Cab for Cutie came out with that Postal Service record. It was a EP, and I think it's like 6 or 8 songs, but an incredible record. But it was called the Postal Service because he stayed in one place and another dude stayed in another place, and they sent the tapes back and forth. And like even our bass player, he lives in Charlotte. So he comes down for practices once a week, once every other week. Sometimes it just kind of depends on what the band's schedule is, But I don't think it matters so much as long as you can make it happen. You just got to be diligent, to get it done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I've had some things that I've tried to do with people out of town or long distance or whatever, and it just both people got to be very, everybody's got to be very committed.
Yeah.
So people's feelings don't get hurt.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it.
I've invested all this time and you ain't doing shit with it. You know what I mean? But I don't think it matters so much. I'm real fortunate that everybody I play with, except for one guy, stays here, and even he's only an hour away. So it's not.
So we can kind of head towards wrapping up because we're gonna try to get Zach to play a song for us. But so it's growing. You think the scene and everything's growing, and you wouldn't rather be any place else right now with where music goes.
You always.
You want to move to Nashville? I get it.
Yeah,
I get that. I get all that. But let's say that happens. You're gonna go to Nashville and do your thing.
A haystack there,
and then you come home.
Right.
This is home.
Right. Oh, this is
back.
definitely home.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it always will be. I don't really want to be anywhere else. I like Columbia. You know what I mean? Until one day maybe I can afford to move to the mountains or something. You know what I mean? But for the foreseeable future, I just can't. Like I said, move my mom here.
Yeah, everybody's here.
I've got a really good network of friends and people who love me and that I love. You know what I mean? Why would I leave that?
All right, Zach, thanks for coming, man. I appreciate
No,
it. This
thanks
has
for
been
having
great.
me,
This has been great.
been
So this
fantastic.
is Zach Seibert from Easy Shakes. And make sure you check him out on Bandcamp and buy the album Wolf, right? The Wolf, right?
The Wolf.
The Wolf. And it's one of the best albums I've heard all year. So, Zach, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kendall.
And we'll hopefully hear a song here in a minute.
I could say anything to you, every word that be construed as truth. I could pour my heart over the coals if I thought that it would save my soul. Maybe I could be a man. Baby, pour us another round. You know I love hearing that sound of my singing and my guitar. Oh Lord, I took a little too far. Maybe I could start a band. Maybe I could start a band. Well, let's go down and we're famous in our heads. When the bad deeds done should have been left undid. When that rope you hold it turns to thread, I'm gonna be there in the end. Baby, tear it down and build it back. Trying to keep life on track. Past is such a funny thing. An antidote or just more pain. Maybe I could settle down. Or maybe I could burn it up. Douse it down with kerosene. Sewer up and get clean. Strike a match and watch it go. Pull the stool and watch the show. Well, let's go down and we're famous in our heads. And the bad deeds done should have been left undid. When that rope you hold it turns to thread, I'm gonna be there in the end.